Have you ever been faced with a moment where you had to choose? Do I speak up or stay silent? Do I welcome the stranger or turn him away? Do I believe that hope is possible even when it seems impossible? Genesis 18 and 19 are biblical stories, but their questions are as real today as ever. Consider this story. It was the start of a new semester at Ridgewood High, and Zoey, a junior, noticed a new student, Jordan, sitting by himself at lunch. Most students at Joey's table didn't pay much attention, but Zoe remembered how hard it was when she was the new kid last year. Zoe decided to grab her lunch tray and sit across from Jordan. "Hi, I'm Zoe. How's your first week going?" she asked. Jordan seemed surprised but smiled and started to relax. Soon, a couple of Zoe's friends joined them. By the end of lunch, Jordan had made his first few friends at Ridgewood. A few weeks later, Zoe overheard some kids in the hallway making fun of another student, Chloe, for her clothes. The group laughed, but Zoe couldn't ignore it. She took a deep breath and said, "Hey, that's not okay. Everyone deserves respect." The bullies rolled their eyes and walked away, but Zoe saw Chloe's grateful smile. On the weekend, Zoe was invited to a party. Some classmates were planning to drink and sneak out after curfew. Zoe's older brother, who'd made some mistakes when he was younger, noticed her hesitation and said, "You can always call me or Mom if you need a ride or feel uncomfortable. Don't let anyone pressure you into doing something you know isn't right." That night at the party, when things started getting out of hand, Zoe remembered her brother's advice. She texted him and he picked her up. She knew she'd made the right choice, even when it wasn't the most popular one. A few days later, Jordan thanked Zoe for welcoming him, and Chloe started sitting with Zoe's group at lunch. Zoe realized that a little kindness and courage could change someone's whole experience at school. She also learned that listening to trustworthy advice could help her make safe and wise decisions, even in tough moments. Welcoming someone new, like Jordan, can make a big difference. Include those who seem left out. It takes guts to speak up against bullying, but your actions can help others feel safe and respected. Peer pressure is real. Think about your choices and trust your instincts about what's right and wrong. Trusted family offer advice because they care about your safety and well being. One person's kindness can create a ripple effect of positivity in your community. Now let's look at Genesis 18 and see if we can find the same kind of situation. Abraham was relaxing near his tent on a hot day when he saw three men standing nearby. Even though he didn't know them, Abraham hurried over, greeted them kindly, and invited them to rest, wash up, and enjoy a meal. He and his wife Sarah quickly prepared a feast for their guests. While they were eating, one of the visitors told Abraham that even though he and Sarah were very old, Sarah would have a baby by next year. Sarah overheard this and laughed to herself, thinking it was impossible. But the visitor, who was actually a messenger from God, said, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" God promised that what he said would come true. After the meal, the visitors got up to leave and looked toward the city of Sodom. God told Abraham that he planned to investigate Sodom and Gomorrah because the people there were treating others badly. Abraham was worried about the good people who might live there. So he bravely talked with God. He asked him, "Will you really destroy the whole city if there are good people there? What if there are 50 or 40 or even just 10 good people?" Each time, God promised that if he found even a few good people, he would spare the whole city for their sake. Genesis 18 teaches us to be kind to everyone, to have hope even when things look impossible, to care about justice and mercy, and to trust that our questions and concerns matter. These are values and attitudes that can help us live better, more caring lives. It also teaches about the importance of hospitality, the nature of faith and doubt, the interplay between divine justice and mercy, the power of intercessory prayer, and the ethical responsibilities of those in covenant with God. It invites reflection on how humans are called to participate in God's purpose for justice, mercy, and righteousness in the world. Abraham warmly welcomes three strangers by providing rest, water, and a lavish meal. The visitors are revealed to be messengers of God. God's presence is mediated through human form, raising theological questions about how the divine interacts with the human world. When faced with unknown visitors, Abraham chooses generosity and proactive hospitality rather than suspicion or indifference. He anticipates needs, delegates tasks, and creates a welcoming environment. Anticipate the needs of those you encounter, even when their intentions are unclear. The visitors announce that Sarah will bear a son, reaffirming God's covenant promise to Abraham and Sarah despite their old age. Abraham listens carefully to the visitor's message, the promise of a son, and to God's intentions regarding Sodom and Gomorrah, before taking action or responding. Importantly, we should gather all available information before responding to a challenge. Respect the perspectives and intentions of others before formulating your approach. Sarah laughs upon hearing she will have a child, reflecting both disbelief and the complexity of faith. God responds, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" A rhetorical question that challenges human skepticism and encourages trust in divine possibilities. The story highlights the tension between human limitations and divine power. Sarah's internal questioning, "Will I really have a child now that I am old?" And Abraham's repeated questions to God about saving Sodom demonstrates the importance of asking questions, even difficult or skeptical ones. Do not be afraid to voice doubts or clarify uncertainties. Use questions to probe for deeper understanding and to challenge assumptions. God reveals plans to investigate the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah, showing divine concern for justice. Abraham famously negotiates with God, pleading for the cities if righteous people can be found there. This introduces the concept of intercessory prayer and human partnership with God in seeking justice. Abraham's dialogue is a foundational text for discussions on justice, mercy, and the moral responsibility to advocate for others. Abraham employs a classic negotiation strategy with God. He begins with a high threshold, 50 righteous people, and then gradually lowers the number through respectful bargaining. Remember to break large problems into smaller, manageable increments. Use respectful step-by-step negotiation to seek compromise or a better outcome. Don't be afraid to persist to the manner is important. The story suggests that God is open to reason and values, justice tempered by mercy. The fate of Sodom and Gomorrah is linked to the universal expectation of moral behavior, not just within Abraham's family. Abraham appeals to God's sense of justice. Far be it from you to do such a thing. Will not the judge of all the earth do right? He frames his argument around principles he and God both value. In difficult situations, ground your arguments in shared values or higher principles. Remind all parties of the common goals or ethics that bind the solution. Abraham does not simply accept the announced fate of Sodom, but advocates for the innocent who might be affected. He models concern for others who might be harmed by blanket decisions. Consider the broader impact of decisions and advocate for just outcomes. The possibility that even a small number of righteous people could save a city highlights the value and influence of individual and communal righteousness. Abraham approaches God with humility, repeatedly saying, "Now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, let me speak just once more." He negotiates with respect and awareness of his position. Approach negotiations and problem solving with humility and respect, even when you're being persistent. God specifies that Abraham has been chosen, so he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. This underlines the ethical dimension of the covenant. So, what can we learn from Genesis 18? It models effective problem solving techniques, openness, careful listening, critical questioning, incremental negotiation, appeal to shared values, advocacy for others, and respectful dialogue. These techniques are applicable not only in spiritual or moral dilemmas, but also in everyday personal, professional, and societal problem-solving situations. Now to the reading. Chapter 18. The Lord appears to Abraham. Then the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre while he was sitting at the tent door in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing nearby. He saw, and he ran from the tent door to meet them. And he bowed himself to the earth. And he said, "My Lord, if now I have found favor in your sight, please do not pass your servant by. Please let a little water be brought and wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. And let me bring a piece of bread that you may refresh your hearts. After that, you may pass on, since in such a manner you have passed by your servant." And they said, "So you shall do as you have said." So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, "Hurry, prepare these sheaves of fine flour, knead it, and make bread cakes." Abraham also ran to the herd and took a tender and choice calf and gave it to his young man, and he hurried to prepare it. Then he took curds and milk and the calf which he had prepared and placed it before them, and he was standing by them under the tree, and they ate. Then they said to him, "Where is Sarah your wife?" And he said, "There, in the tent." And he said, "I will surely return to you at this time next year, and behold, Sarah your wife will have a son." And Sarah was listening at the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in age. Sarah was past childbearing. And Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "After I'm worn out, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also?" And the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh, saying, 'Shall I indeed bear a son when I am so old?' Is anything too difficult for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you at this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Then Sarah denied it, however, saying, "I did not laugh," for she was afraid. And he said, "No, but you did laugh." The Lord and Abraham speak about Sodom. Then the men rose up from there and looked down toward Sodom, and Abraham was walking with them to send them off. Now the Lord said, "Shall I conceal from Abraham what I am about to do? Since Abraham will surely become a great and mighty nation, and in him all the nations of the earth will be blessed. For I have known him, so that he may command his children and his household after him, that they keep the way of the Lord to do righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring upon Abraham what he has spoken about him." So the Lord said, "The outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah is indeed great, and their sin is exceedingly grave. I will go down now and see whether they have done entirely according to its outcry, which has come to me. And if not, I will know. Then the men turned away from there and went toward Sodom, while Abraham was still standing before the Lord. Then Abraham came near and said, Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you indeed sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to put to death the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous and the wicked are treated alike. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth do justice? So the Lord said, If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare the whole place on their account. And Abram answered and said, Now behold, I have ventured to speak to the Lord, although I am but dust and ashes. Suppose the 50 righteous are lacking 5. Will you destroy the whole city because of 5? And he said, I will not destroy it if I find 45 there. Then he spoke to him yet again and said, Suppose 40 are found there. And he said, I will not do it on account of the 40. Then he said, Oh, may the Lord not be angry, and I shall speak. Suppose 30 are found there. And he said, I will not do it if I find 30 there. And he said, Now behold, I have ventured to speak to the Lord. Suppose 20 are found there. And he said, I will not destroy it on account of the 20. Then he said, Oh, may the Lord not be angry, and I shall speak only this once. Suppose 10 are found there. And he said, I will not destroy it on account of the 10. And as soon as he had finished speaking to Abraham, the Lord departed, and Abraham returned to his place. Now, Genesis 19 is a dramatic and morally complex chapter, depicting the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, the rescue of Lot and his family, and the troubling aftermath involving Lot's daughters. It provides powerful conceptual lessons and problem-solving insights, both positive and negative. Lot offers hospitality to the visiting angels, echoing Abraham in the previous chapter. But Sodom's citizens respond with hostility. Hospitality is a virtue, but it is not universally practiced, and it can come under threat when societal values are corrupt. The townspeople attempt to assault Lot's guests exemplifies extreme moral decay, not just sexual violence, but a radical violation of hospitality and justice. The destruction of the cities is portrayed as a direct response to systematic evil. Lot's deliverance is attributed not to his own merit, but to Abraham's intercession, highlighting the power of advocacy and mercy. The angels command Lot's family to flee and not look back. Lot's wife looks back and becomes a pillar of salt. Hesitation and looking back, literally or metaphorically, can have irreversible consequences. Obedience, even when difficult, is sometimes necessary for survival. You need to react if the situation is dire. If you've been warned and go ahead and do things, you can't know what the answer is going to be. Lot, under pressure, offers his daughters to the mob to protect his guests, a shocking act with deep moral ambiguity. Lot's daughters, believing they are the last people on earth, get their father drunk and bear his children, raising questions about desperation, survival, and ethics. The descendants of Lot's daughters become ancestors of Israel's neighbors and rivals, showing how morally fraught decisions can have long-term, unpredictable effects. Delaying or hesitating in crisis can be fatal. The angels physically pull Lot and his family out when they hesitate. In emergencies, recognize when deliberation must give way to swift action. Lot pleads not to flee to the mountains, but to a nearby small town, Zoar, and the angels agree. Even under pressure, it's possible to propose practical alternatives and seek compromise. After Zoar, Lot moves to the mountains out of fear, showing flexibility in response to evolving threats. Stay adaptable. Initial solutions may need revision as situations develop. Attempting to solve one problem by creating another, morally unacceptable one, often leads to tragic consequences. Avoid solutions that violate fundamental ethical principles, even under extreme pressure. Lot's warnings sounds like a joke to his sons-in-law, who refuse to flee. Urgency and clarity are critical in crisis communication. Disbelief or poor messaging can be deadly. The explicit command not to look back is ignored, resulting in immediate loss. In some transitions, attachment to the past can prevent survival or growth. Lot's daughter's desperate solution to perceived extinction demonstrates how fear and isolation can warp judgment. Extreme isolation and fear can lead to unethical or tragic decisions. Seek counsel and do not act alone in desperation. So, what can we learn from Genesis 19? It offers both positive and cautionary problem-solving lessons. Act decisively in crisis. Negotiate for practical solutions. Remain adaptable and communicate urgently. But it also warns against resorting to unethical means, letting fear or nostalgia override clear judgment. And making decisions in isolation or desperation. The chapter is a sobering meditation on the complexity of moral choices under duress and the long-term consequences that flow from them. Chapter 19. Then the two angels came to Sodom in the evening, as Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. Lot saw them and rose to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. And he said, "Now behold, my lords, please turn aside into your servant's house and spend the night. Wash your feet, then you may rise early and go on your way." They said, however, "No, but we shall spend the night in the square." Yet he pressed them strongly, so they turned aside to him and entered his house. And he made a feast for them, and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Before they lay down, the men of Sodom surrounded the house, from young to old, all the people from every quarter. And they called to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them." But Lot went out to them at the doorway and shut the door behind him and said, "Please, my brothers, do not act wickedly. Now behold, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Please let me bring them out to you and do to them what is good in your eyes. Only do nothing to these men, inasmuch as they have come under the shelter of my roof." But they said, "Step aside." Furthermore, they said, "This one came to sojourn, and already he is persistently acting like a judge. Now we will treat you more wickedly than them." So they pressed hard against Lot and stepped up to break the door. But the men reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And they struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness, from small to great, so that they wearied themselves trying to find the door. Then the 2 men said to Lot, "Whom else have you here? A son-in-law, and your sons, and your daughters, and everyone you have in the city? Bring them out of the place, for we are about to destroy this place, because their outcry has become great before the Lord. So the Lord has sent us to destroy it." And Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who were to marry his daughters, and said, "Get up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city." But he appeared to his sons-in-law to be jesting. Now at the break of dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Get up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be swept away in the punishment of the city." But he hesitated. So the men seized his hand, and the hand of his wife, and the hands of his 2 daughters. For the compassion of the Lord was upon him. And they brought him out and put him outside the city. Now it happened as they brought them outside, one said, "Escape for your life. Do not look behind you, and do not stay anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains, lest you be swept away." But Lot said to them, "Oh no, my lords. Now behold, your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have magnified your loving kindness which you have shown me by preserving my life. But I cannot escape to the mountains, lest calamity overtake me and I die. Now behold, this town is near enough to flee to, and it is small. Please let me escape there. Is it not small, that my life may be preserved?" And he said to him, "Behold, I grant you this request also, that I will not overthrow the city of which you have spoken. Hurry, escape there, for I cannot do anything until you arrive there." Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. The sun had risen over the earth when Lot came to Zoar. And the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and the fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities, and all the valley, and all the inhabitants of the cities, and what grew on the ground. Then his wife, from behind him, looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Now Abraham arose early in the morning and went to the place where he had stood before the Lord. And he looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, and toward the land of the valley, and he saw, and behold, the smoke of the land went up like the smoke of a furnace. Thus it happened when God destroyed the cities of the valley, that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot lived. And Lot went up from Zoar and stayed in the mountains, and his 2 daughters with him, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar, and he stayed in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. Then the firstborn said to the younger, "Our father's old, and there's not a man on earth to come in to us after the manner of the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and let us lie with him that we may preserve our seed through our father." So they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Now it happened on the following day that the firstborn said to the younger, "Behold, I lay last night with my father. Let us make him drink wine tonight also, and you go in and lie with him, that we may preserve our seed through our father." So they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Thus both the daughters of Lot conceived by their father, and the firstborn bore a son, and called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. As for the younger, she also bore a son, and called his name Ben-Amani. He is the father of the sons of Ammon to this day. Genesis 18 and 19 offer timeless wisdom that can shape our daily lives through practical actions and self-reflection. These chapters show that how we respond to the unexpected, treat others, and make decisions under pressure has lasting impact, not only for ourselves, but for our communities and generations to come. Abraham's example urges us to ask, how am I welcoming others today? Whether with a kind word, a listening ear, or tangible help, small acts of hospitality can transform relationships and environments. Lot's story reminds us to respond quickly and decisively in moments of crisis. Am I acting promptly when something important is at stake, or am I hesitating out of fear or comfort? Abraham's courageous questioning of God inspires us to advocate for what is right, even when it's uncomfortable. We might ask, am I willing to speak up for justice? Do I negotiate and reason respectfully, even with those in authority? Lot's negotiations with the angels also encourages us to look for creative solutions rather than simply accepting what is offered. At the same time, Genesis 19 warns against compromising our values under pressure. When facing tough decisions, we can pause and reflect. Am I upholding my principles or taking an easier but less ethical path? Lot's wife, looking back, reminds us to consider, am I holding on to the past in ways that keep me from moving forward? Finally, the aftermath of Sodom's destruction shows how choices made in fear or isolation can have unintended long-term consequences. A daily question might be, am I seeking wise counsel and acting out of hope or making decisions from a place of desperation? By turning the lessons of 18 and 19 into practical questions and habits, we can cultivate a life marked by compassion, courage, integrity, and thoughtful action. Qualities that help us and those around us flourish. I'm Merrill, and this is Battlegram. This is a Value for Value podcast. If you received any value from today's conversation, please share or comment.